I, but he is best known for his leadership of the US Army throughout the Allied invasion of Normandy in June of 1944. Before that, actually, General Patton went to the Olympic Games in 1912 as a modern pentathlete, and he was a great sword fighter, and he used to teach a lot of sword fighting within the army before going on to World War I and then World War II. But he was also famous for his philosophy on inspiring the troops with vulgar-ridden speeches and leading with an offensive attack. And he is well remembered by the French, who were delighted that he made his presence felt here in France back in June of 1944. He also led the charge throughout the Mediterranean and the invasion of Casablanca, likewise the Allied invasion into Sicily. So he's a man with an extraordinary military record.
Well, just before the top of the climb, so I was looking out to see some of the people that I rode with in there, some of them on the right-hand side, having a look at the riders come past. So thanks to the guys from UPS for a great ride today. But I think they'll be marvelling at the speed that these guys are able to ride up that hill, because a lot of those guys I was with this morning were suffering.
Voss out of the saddle. He's in a big gear. He's using the big chainring at the front. He's muscling his way to the top. He'll be going anaerobic at this point. He knows how much power he can produce and for how long he can sustain it. And there's nothing that he can do about the chase from behind. At this point, he's riding to the numbers, flirting with his threshold, hoping it's enough to collect one more point in the King of the Mountains jersey.
I don't think he's riding to any numbers anymore. I think he's riding to the pain level that he can tolerate, right up into the point where he's about to blow up, but just not quite. Look, mouth open, out of the saddle, back and falling back into the seat again, squeezing every little bit out for that one solitary point, because he knows that is his ticket to the podium when he gets here to Utah Beach at the end of the day. No matter what happens in the crosswinds, no matter if he gets dropped, he'll be on the podium and he'll be in polka dots.
And you can see all those shirts on the side of the road. The publicity caravan has come through 2 hours in advance. Car 4 is the sponsor of the King of the Mountains classification. They've thrown the T-shirts out to the spectators, and they're cheering on Paul Voss to get to the top, collect another points, and move to the lead of the King of the Mountains classification. Voss is almost there. We'd love to take a look across the shoulder and see what is happening with the chase. It was Alex Howes of Cannondale Drapac who was the one trying to close it down.
He's weaving from left to right as he goes up. He's changing gears constantly, in and out of the saddle. And there it is, finally.
He's made it to the top. Paul Voss has survived. He collects another point, and it's almost like a stage victory. He sits up as if he has won the stage, and now we'll wait for the rest of his breakaway companions. But he's required at the podium presentation at the end of the day. Lee Howard again across the top in second position, but no prize today for Lee Howard.
Well, Lee Howard being more of a sprinter, he wouldn't be, I think, that familiar with how the mountains competition works, especially in the Tour de France, which he's also never ridden. He wouldn't have been aware that there's only 1 point for the winner and nothing for second, so it makes no difference coming across the line in second. And Paul Voss, I'm sure now he'll be looking forward to just going back, sitting in the wheels, taking a little bit of a break before starting to contribute again to this breakaway and trying to build their gap back out. As we now see, it's fallen under 4 minutes to the peloton. 3 minutes 50 for our 5 leaders. Any second now they'll be back together with 148 kilometres to go. Frank Schleck seemed to have something stuck in the derailleur.
And he was just advised by Shane Archbold from the Bora Argon 18 team, another one of the Kiwis in the race, one of 3 New Zealanders in this year's race. Good to see him making his debut.
The man known as the Flying Mullet, due to his neck hair, as they call it in some parts of Europe.
He's got a haircut straight out of 1987.
He must have watched Dirty Dancing and become a fan of Patrick Swayze.
It's right up there with Patrick, isn't it? Frank Schleck, the man who finished in 3rd place in the Tour de France in 2011 when Cadel Evans went out the winner. It was his brother Andy in 2nd position. Andy, the younger of the Schleck brothers, has been retired now for a couple of years and owns and operates a bike shop in Luxembourg.
Andy himself a winner of the Tour de France.
Indeed, in
Promoted
2010.
From 2nd place when Alberto Contador was stripped of the title. So the Schlecks with a great record in the Tour de France. Unfortunately, Andy succumbed to a knee injury that was recurring and he could not get it better and decided to call it a day and hang up the wheels, which was almost quite a surprise for such a young guy. to not persevere longer and try and get things right. But, okay, I don't know the full extent of the injury, but did seem a bit strange to hang it up so quickly.
Can't help but wonder whether there'll be lingering regrets when he gets into his 40s and it's all too late. Paulo Tiralongo for the Astana team, controlling affairs for them and making sure that they protect their team leader, Fabio Aru, who's making his debut at the race after having won the Tour of Spain last year. Michael Matthews, he is one of the contenders for the stage tomorrow, and Michael Matthews, riding for the Orica Bike Exchange team, is well aware of the main challenges for today's stage. A fast finisher, perhaps not quite quick enough to contend with Kittel and Cavendish, but tomorrow he is certainly one of the favourites. For the increase in the tempo, and you can see how frantic it is, 10 kilometres to the intermediate sprint, but that seems insignificant. Tosato at the front, and there's been a fall.
Contador.
Alberto Contador. It is Alberto Contador with a lot of skin off on the right-hand side. That is disastrous for Contador. The whole season based around this race, and Contador, it might be over before it barely gets started. They won't be waiting for him. It was his teammate Tosato who was right on the front, and he'll have heard it.
And I think maybe Contador was taken out by another rider on the inside. It was one of the BMC riders there.
Marcus Burkhardt.
With the yellow shoes. Burkhardt, I'm not sure if there was a tangle of handlebars. They came around the corner. But tragedy has struck for Alberto Contador. Going down at this point in the Tour, at any point in the Tour, is bad. On day one like this, with crosswinds like there is today, let's just hope he's okay and can get himself back to the bunch and there's no real damage. But his jersey is completely torn apart.
Well, there's no urgency in the chase. His team riders, his teammates, they're waiting for him. They're trying to encourage Alberto to get going. But Alberto is showing no signs at this point of really opening up the throttle. He's currently just trying to do the assessment, bike change. That's the first of the assessments. Next is, how is he physically?
And the question is now, what do his rivals do? Does the peloton now ease up? They will have heard what's happened behind. Or do they take advantage of the situation? We saw Alberto Contador take advantage once when Andy Schleck dropped his chain. Is this a similar situation? Will they keep going? And look at Alberto Contador here. Hopefully his jersey is the worst of his injuries, but definitely skin off. This is Geraint Thomas.
Well, he celebrated the 3-1 win for Wales last night, but he's not celebrating this afternoon. Looking for the team car for the bike change. Problems for Geraint. Rear wheel puncher. Just a change of the rear wheel, and it's the neutral service from Mavic. Unfortunately, Geraint Thomas has got no ambitions of his own, and the good news for the Welshman is that Froome has avoided the trouble.
So Alberto Contador, following his bodyguard Matteo Tosato around that bend, was just a few positions behind him. Didn't quite make it into the wheel to get around that bend, and maybe took a bit of a risk to try and get around the corner and back into the wheel of Tosato, but then came undone. And unfortunately for him, as he went down, there was a traffic island right in the middle of the road, and his right shoulder took the brunt of that fall as he crashed into the traffic island. His team now dropped back. Team time trial mode now to try and bring Alberto Contador back to the peloton.
And they're now being caught by the group. But Danny Navarro is the rider in the red colours from Cofidis. He was not involved in the fall. He missed the split. This is Matteo Tosato now who's dropping back. If Alberto had been following the bodyguard, he would have been safe.
And it doesn't. Peloton, look at that long line on the right of screen, all trying to get themselves up to that arrowhead. You look at them spread across the road at the front, but at the back, it's panic stations trying to get back. And is the pace going out at the front? It looks like it is. A lot of discussion now going on at the front between Lotto, Katusha, Movistar, Ethics Quickstep. So the pace really come off. So it looks to be, fortunately for Alberto Contador, the peloton is sitting up and will allow them to come back fairly easily, but it'll all depend on what the damage is to the Spanish former Tour champion.
Well, it's been 7 years since Alberto Contador has won a stage at the Tour de France. That was back in 2009, the second time he won the race overall. Yet, understandably so, we always talk about him as a contender to win the race. if he gets back to this group, which judging by the composition of the peloton, the way it's starting to fan out, I think he will get back to this group. Frank Schleck, I should say, is the rider that has gone towards the front to slow things down.
Well, who I saw there was Fabian Cancellara, one of, you would say, the patron of the peloton, one of the elder statesmen now of the peloton. Now, his final year, but he's always been a rider to observe the etiquette, the unspoken and unwritten rules. And he would have got himself to the front and said, hey, this is a moment when we wait. You don't do that to each other. And I think he's right too. 75 kilometres to go. I don't think it's the right thing to keep going on with it and to Contador's disadvantage. Other people may disagree, but that's my point of view, and I'd say it's Fabian Cancellara's as well.
So if Alberto Contador makes it back and he has no broken bones and it's just skin off, that crash is still cost him the chance of winning the Tour de France, because his body is not just recovering from the physical effort, it's trying to mend all that. Lost the Tour de France in 2008. Was not up Alpe d'Huez when Carlos Astra won. It wasn't on the time trial before they hit Paris. It was the crash that he had on about stage 9 and all the skin he lost. He just fatigued a little bit more than Carlos, who had no problems throughout the race, as Cadel was trying to recuperate from the strain of racing and from the crash. And Alberto is going to find himself in exactly that position this year.
It certainly makes it very, very difficult indeed. It's one thing to recover from the race, but to be recovering from injuries. And I hope for Alberto it is just skin and not something more structural.
The good sign is he's out of the saddle. So he's got some weight on the shoulder, he's got some weight on the collarbone, and the wrist is carrying the weight as well. So in terms of bones, it looks okay. In terms of grimace, that's enormous.
But he'll be quite relieved to be already in amongst the cars. He's got a lot of his teammates there, and he will see the peloton up in front of him. And he will have been told the peloton's sitting up, so don't panic too much. Come back and then get those wounds seen to straight away, because the last thing you need, you can ask Buani this, is a wound that's not treated properly that then gets infected as they now come through 5 kilometres to the sprint. The question now is, does the peloton and the sprinters teams want to ramp things back up, go for maximum points at the intermediate sprint? They'll have to catch the breakaway, which is now slipping back out to 40 seconds, re-establishing a lead because the peloton has sat up.
Well, that's where I thought he was quite lucky in terms of being able to get back to the peloton, because there's lots of others in the race whose race doesn't concern Contador. Like, well, Peter Sagan, one of his teammates, who's going for the green jersey. We note that Sagan didn't go back to collect him, the world champion, because he's got his own ambitions. And others are there thinking about that green jersey as well. So that just naturally increases the tempo. But now that Alberto has returned, the truce will be over.
Be a good way to run the competition. Win a stage, you're active. You're on, you're in it for green.
So with your second places in the battle for green behind Eric Zabel, that would elevate you to how many green jerseys?
I'm not sure. I actually haven't thought about it.
I thought we were going with the old Paul Keating, the former Australian Prime Minister, statement of always back self-interest. At least you know it's trying.
No, I don't go for woulda, coulda, shouldas with myself and my own career. That's how it was then. But I'd like to see the rule come in, because I think it'll make it a lot more interesting, a lot more at stake.
Well, there's 1 kilometre to go before they collect the first points in the race for the green jersey, but you've won 3 times.
Now, Lee Howard, he missed out on the mountain points. He tried to keep Barter and Voss under control going to the first climb, but now he's in his territory. Will he be able to wrap up the points? On paper, he's by far the fastest of this group.
Lee Howard will win this intermediate sprint to collect the 20 points as a mark of honour. 500 metres to go. De La Place at the front, followed by Lee Howard. It's then Alex Howes and Jan Barter at the back of it. Jan Barter's going to take a flyer. He wants the points. And Lee Howard, is he going to respond? Yes, he is. Howard picks up the slipstream of the big check. It's Barter who is at the front. Lee Howard is closing down. Alex Howes has drifted off the wheel. So too is De La Place. Barter looking to collect all the intermediate prizes for Bora Argon 18. Howard checks across the shoulder. And now Howard goes, making his bid to collect the 20 points. Lee Howard, bienvenue on the Tour de France. On debut, he collects 20 points in the race for green.
Nice job, Lee Howard. Well spotted. I thought for a moment he's going to get surprised here and he's not going to even be having a look. Right at that second, I was almost going to say it. Looked over his shoulder. As we look now at the peloton coming through, Marcel Kittel starts to signal his intentions. Andre Greipel takes him on. Greipel takes maximum points from the peloton just ahead of Marcel Kittel, who for me was not even out of third gear.
It was a sprint of who can use the least amount of energy to get the maximum points. It was a very conservative sprint without trying to give too much away or spending too much energy. And Contador is now in the hands of the race doctor. Looks like Leo Sayer. It's not going to be a comfortable night's sleep for Alberto.
No, he'll certainly be sleeping on the left side tonight, Alberto Contador. He gets his shoulder patched up. And, well, the medical team from the Tour de France, they're very accustomed to fixing injuries and dealing with incidences like this on the go. And they not only will have given it a bit of a clean out and disinfected at the moment, but as soon as Alberto's off the bike, they'll be doing that again. Probably his own team doctor will be the one doing it, making sure that every bit of grit and dirt is out of that wound and out of any others. You can't afford, when you crash in a race, to not treat any tiny little mark. And I'm speaking from experience because I once had a crash in Belgium where we did all the major wounds, shoulder, hip, knee, buttocks, the whole lot. It was excruciating. And there was one on my ankle. And they said, and that one there? I said, it's okay. It's already dried up. It's fine. That's where I got an infection. It ended up ruling me out of the Giro d'Italia, which was 2 weeks later because I got so sick. So you've got to really go over the whole body. It's like when you go and hire a car, you've got to walk around and check the damage. If you see something, take care of it, say it. Same as an injury. If you see it, take care of it because it'll be the one that comes back and bites you.
Otherwise, you pay later. Good analogy. I like it. Matteo Tessato, I should say, and Matej Bodnar, the two riders waiting with Alberto Contador, who was getting heavily strapped up. Well, that didn't quite work. Let's have another go at it. De La Place plows away at the front, raising the stakes as a local hero. The Aussie flag for the Aussie that won the intermediate sprint, Lee Howard. Alex Howes is next in line in the green colours of the Cannondale Drapac squad. And then it is Jan Barter in the black colours of Bora Argon 18. So with 49.3 kilometres to go, let's now head across to Paul Sherwin and Phil Liggett to take you through to the finish.
Thank you very much indeed, Matt, and also to Robbie there. Have brought us now to 49 kilometres to go from the finish. As we're watching the peloton now, a little bit bemused by the fact that Contador's already had one nasty fall in this race when it was barely 3 hours old. He's all bandaged up and he's still in the race, of course, and they're saying it's just multiple abrasions. Same with Brent Buchwalter, who fell with him. But Paul, this breakaway now is going to have to concentrate on the 58-second gap to the two front runners.
Yes, but 58 seconds, Phil, at speeds like this, this is around about a kilometre. I think the main field have pretty much got that breakaway group pegged. They have been in the breakaway since kilometre zero, so they're going to be reasonably easy to pull it down towards the end, because although we're looking at 50 kilometres to go to the finish, that last 50 kilometres, we'll see the main field touching speeds in excess of 55 kilometres an hour, I think, just because of the fact that we're going to pick up an advantage from the tailwind, and then down towards the end a little bit of a nasty crosswind too. Used to the dangers of the day, they now realise it's going to get just a little bit more hairy as they start to move inland into the headwind, head down towards Sainte-Mère-Église, and then they will line up. And that's the interesting thing about today's stage. Once they start to turn left and head down towards headwind, head for the finishing line in Utah Beach, that's when they will pick up this roaring tailwind, and we'll see incredible speeds today.
Cars getting themselves back in line.
That's Van Garderen.
Yep, change of colours, but it's TJ Van Garderen. He's been back.
Well, I'm just looking at the bike there, and he doesn't have a number on his bike. And interestingly enough, TJ Van Garderen, A little story about him as well as he gets back on there with the help of... Oh, crash at the back.
Giro from the Lamprey team on the floor here.
Well, you see, it's all nervous now, Phil. These are the moments. Look at that crash. And in fact, the accident happened because they were all slowing down to queue up to get around that right-hand corner.
And his 6th Tour de France, Giro, Japanese rider. He was the first Japanese rider to take part in the Tour back in 2009. And he's always arrived in Paris. That's a very credible performance by him.
Well, he should be lucky enough to get back on here quickly, because the man who was at the front of him there in the black and red jersey, that's TJ Van Garderen, shares the leadership of Team BMC with his Australian teammate. And although, in fact, rather interesting, because Richie Porte on that squad has been given the #1 slot. 91 for Richie Porte, 99 for TJ Van Garderen. But when we spoke to both of them before the start of this race, they said, look, we're both going in as joint leaders for this team. And I think it'll actually be better for TJ Van Garderen, because it'll take a little bit of pressure off him being the sole leader of the squad. And as long as both Richie Porte and TJ Van Garderen don't have the proverbial bad day, they will both be up in the top 10 and vying and struggling to try and get themselves a podium finish in Paris. Richie Porte, I have to say, so far this year has had a great season with a fantastic performance in the Criterium de Dauphiné, even though he lost out a little bit on the final day of the race.
The kilometres are ticking off. We're exactly 10 miles, 16 kilometres from the finish. These guys know there is still a chance when there's daylight between your back wheel and the peloton. There's the 15k to go.
Well, 15 kilometres now inside of 10 miles. You know, Alex House there, he was trying to catch the referee in the red car unawares, because I think the referee's driver was going to sleep a little bit, and Alex House said, well, look, if I can just use that to get a little bit of slipstream to pull myself away, there's always this chance. He will not give up until the main field are right on his wheel. But, you know, the main field, the professionals like this, Phil, they do not make mistakes, and they know how important today's stage is. They know how much of a chance they've got as a sprinter. Andre Greipel, Marcel Kittel, Mark Cavendish get across the line in first place. It's not only today, it's not a stage victory today, it's a stage victory plus a yellow jersey.
The peloton are under that same 15-kilometre banner. They're holding it 30 seconds. We're bound now for the town of Sainte-Mère-Église here, the town that played such an important pinnacle role in June 1944, where the parachutists secured the town, and 5 hours later the Americans came through, and so D-Day was on.
There's still no acceleration in the main field as they all wait for the moment. The thing is, Phil, they want to have the lead-out train, but they want to have the lead-out train that has got a lot of firepower in the final few kilometres. You've got to have 5 riders left, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then eventually you want to launch, almost catapult your leader into a sprint. Just remembering a story on the front here, Phil, of Alex House from Colorado. In fact, we talked to his team before they announced the squad. They said, OK, we'll let you know who's riding. And Alex House is riding, and he said, well, can I tell them, can I tell anybody, can I put it out on Twitter, because he's quite a Twitter fanatic. And they said, no, you can't tell anybody at all, it's a secret until the last moment. And then he said, well, can I tell my mum, please?
This is the town itself, Sainte-Mère-Église, and a massive crowd has turned out. They've been looking forward to this day for not literally months but years, as the riders now bring them through. The English flag flies high. Back out onto the road now, which will take them straight to the finishing line. The locals were extremely worried about that left-hand bend. They thought they wouldn't get round it.
It's not far now, Phil, from that corner. This left-hand bend now is where the riders will start to pick up that very strong tailwind.
These barriers start just inside 2 kilometres from the finish line, about 1.8 kilometres to go, and that narrows the road because they haven't put them on the grass, they've put them actually on the road. Now, the most career Tour de France stage wins so far, Mark Cavendish, of course, has 26. Andre Greipel is in there with 10, and Marcel Kittel is also there. But everybody talking about Greipel. He's the rider in the white jersey on the right of the picture. Coming up to 6 kilometres out.
Well, you know, one thing, Mark Cavendish has done so much in his career, Phil. He's got a big dream towards the end of this year, and that, of course, is to ride the Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro. But he's never had the yellow jersey. He's been a world champion on the track, but he has that dream of taking the yellow jersey, and as a sprinter you don't get that opportunity very often. He almost had the dream chance right in front of a home crowd, right in front of his mum when the race finished in the heart of Harrogate, and he crashed within sight of the finish line, and he was beaten by Marcel Kittel.
Exactly, and he's well aware of that. Cavendish knows his history and takes note of it. He knows this finish. He knows the sort of finish it is. He knows it's dangerous, but it's the sort of finish he loves here now. The last town before we head now in past the famous church in Sainte-Mère-Église. The left-hand turn. The road continues now. Now there's one little sweep at about 2 kilometres out. It's also the end of the breakaway. I'm sorry to say 183 kilometres. Those two riders, with others on occasion, have led the Tour de France today.
It looks as if there's a crash at the back again. Lotto Jumbo.
Well, this was the corner that the locals were worried about, and it looks like they might have been right here. It looks as though it might be Timo Russen.
There's a Direct Energy rider as well gone down there. This was the point that all of the team managers were talking about. You know, it's the only corner in the last 10 kilometres of this race.
So Timo Russen, one of only 31 riders who are riding their first Tour de France this year, now sitting on the roadside here. And also gone down there. It looks as though it's number 56, I think it was, Paul. Oh, that's Timo Russen who's gone down, yeah.
The other one is Angelo Tulik of France. More importantly now,
first-timer.
Yeah, back to the front, because this is the most important part of this race now. We've got the team that have one of the greatest sprinters on the circuit, the new kid on the block, Marcel Kittel, over on the right-hand side. But the thing I feel, Phil, that the team Lotto Soudal, they have got the most experienced lead-out train, and so far we haven't seen anything of the black and white jerseys of Mark Cavendish's Dimension Data team.
No, and they've got to get him through, because it's very difficult to guide your man through. They're on the left-hand side, actually. They've got that sort of black blob from the helicopter, and the rider in the Norwegian flag there, Bosenhagen, he's on the same team as well. He's the champion again of Norway. As we switch over both sides of the road, the two big sprint teams, our two principal favourites, Kittel and Greipel, have got command at this moment in time. You can virtually feel the energy coming out of that bunch now as the sprinters try to maintain the position, let nobody else onto the game. I'm hesitating. I'm watching Greipel down there. He's trying to be pushed off his wheel. He's not having any of it.
Yes, but on the other side, there's another white jersey with bands around the middle, right on the wheel of Marcel Kittel, and that is the man we don't really regard as a pure sprinter. That, of course, Peter Sagan, but he knows how to freelance his way through a situation like this, and he has picked, I think, the wheel of Marcel Kittel for his chance to get himself a stage victory today.
Will it be the right wheel? We've been told that Peter is going to go for it today, even though we always say he's not a pure sprinter. And this is, I think, a pure sprint finish. But we'll find out as we continue into the last 2.5 kilometres to go. And Lotto Jumbo are beginning to burst onto the scene. They have a secret sprinter.
They certainly do. That's Dylan Groenewegen. He's the third-place rider on the right-hand side there. He's just recently been crowned a champion of Holland, and that's why his team has come to the front.
Wow.
This is the moment you have to have your nerves. You have to wait for the right moment to make that acceleration. But this is also the kind of sprint, Phil, where we're looking now. I told you we're going to be looking at speeds approaching 70 kilometres an hour. We're doing faster than 40 miles an hour now.
We're going to hit 50 miles an hour if we keep this up, and that's 80 kilometres an hour, because this wind that we get in the last 2 kilometres, there's nothing, only the fields here as we head directly towards the museum on Utah Beach. And if they don't stop, then they go into La Manche. And the drive for Katusha now, their big sprinter, Alexander Kristoff, is who they're thinking of.
Yeah, Christophe, his team has the red jersey with the K right in the middle. Now, all of a sudden, Dimension Data have got themselves organised. 1, 2, 3, 4 riders from Dimension Data. It's Edvald Bosenhagen is right in there, and he's about to take over control at the front. And that, of course, is for Mark Cavendish. You've got to keep organised. We're now, the next banner they will see, Phil, will be the red kite. 1 kilometre to go to the finish. And it's going to take them at these speeds 1 kilometre in a minute.
I reckon faster, Paul, about 47, 50 seconds in that last kilometre, because they're going to get the full benefit of the wind. They're into the barriers.
I think the rider who went down from Bora Argonville was the Irish rider, Sam Bennett. But there you've got the top men in the sport. Cavendish ahead of Kittel, over on the right-hand side, Andre Greipel, and not far away, Brian Coquart. And in the mix as well, Peter Sagan.
Wow, it's all about getting it right. Well, poor old Bennett there, one of only a couple of Irish riders in the race. He is the sprinter, and he was right up amongst it there. For a while it looked as though Peter Sagan was going to do something, then threw on the...
Well, Utah Beach has seen a dramatic finish, a nasty accident, the provisional result then. So it's Mark Cavendish gets the victory ahead of Marcel Kittel, the big favourite on the day. This is the damage though, and it was that barriers when we came into the final couple of kilometres there. So many risks being taken. I think most of the overall contenders got in there nice and safely. But I do think that rider coming in from Bora Argon, I do think it was the Irish rider Sam Bennett who went down very hard, and the first rider to go down was a Katusha rider, but the big names did manage to survive. Greipel over on the right hand side, but the Manx Missile strikes again with a perfectly timed sprint, a brilliant lead out by his man Mark Renshaw. That's enough. People question Cavendish's season this year, Phil, as to whether he was trying to do too much, but he's actually got it spot on here. I wonder what's up next, the Olympic Games.
He's got one thing he always dreamed of, and Paul, he's also got himself 27 wins in the Tour de France now. He's only one short of the great Belgian Eddy Merckx. Bernard Hinault, sorry. And Hinault's places aren't as good as Mark, so Mark will go second.
That is the kick. That is all he needed, and it just goes to show he's still got that punch coming down towards the end. He really is a special guy when he gets it right. And he's been dreaming about this, and I suppose now he can not worry too much about the fact that he didn't win the British National Championships. No. He finished in second place, but he was coming off antibiotics at the time.
And there is the result. Sprinters all, Cavendish, Kittel, Sagan, Greipel. Ed turns, watch him. It's his first Tour de France. We knew he was fast. Laporte was in 6th place. Coquart 7th. Good result for the Frenchman. Christophe in 8th place. And the first timer from Great Britain, Danny McClay, in 9th place. What a great result for him. And the evergreen, Henderson, coming over the line for New Zealand in the 10th spot.
The stage starts in Saint-Lô when it makes its way through to Cherbourg on Cotentin. It's 183 kilometres. There are 3 categorised climbs within the first 52 k's in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey, but the most significant obstacle on today's stage is the final climb through to the finish line. Category 3, it's not particularly long at just 2 kilometres, but there are some steep sections as much as a gradient of 14%. Not a day for the sprinters. Certainly not a day for the pure sprinters anyway, but Peter Sagan is amongst the contenders. Yellow jersey, all smiles for Mark Cavendish with the handlebar tape and the helmet to match. And riding at the front with the other wearers of the various leaders' jerseys for the classifications, and amongst them Paul Voss was the first to attack wearing the King of the Mountains jersey to try and get himself up the road for the first 2 climbs of the day. He managed to do so, but having been joined by 3 other riders, he missed out on the points on the first 2 climbs that have been contested. At the back of the group is the Norwegian. This is Vegard Breen at the back of the group. He won over the top of the first climb on today's stage. At the front from Trek Segafredo is Jesper Stuyven. He won over the second climb of the day. There is one more Category 4 climb to come before the climb through to the finish line. Paul Voss has lost contact with this group, and you can see he's now at 10 seconds. Here he is. They've gone all out with the bike. It's got the polka dots on it to match the jersey. He's got a teammate that is also in that breakaway. Benedetti, the Italian rider from Bora Argon 18, is with the other 2 that are ever so slightly off the front from his teammate. And you can see Benedetti with the red helmet on, sitting at the back of the group, no doubt waiting for Paul Voss, hoping that he can return. And he is almost there. And they're almost at the next climb of the day, the Côte de Montpenchon. And they are onto it, a 1.2 kilometre climb. You can see almost 6% the average gradient. Paul Voss has got his work cut out if he's any chance to claw his way back and collect the 1 point that is on offer to absolutely secure that jersey. Green and Sturven, the two riders at the front of this group. The Norwegian with the hint of green in amongst all that black. He's on 1 point, so too is Jesper Sturven. Paul Voss is on 2 points. If one of those riders is to win the 1 point that's up for grabs here and get equal with Paul Voss, it would come down to a countback between them. But then we've got the finish of the stage as well, where there is 2 points up for grabs for the winner of the stage. Voss has almost made it back. Benedetti still sitting at the back of the group. Now the sprint is on. Breen it is who opens it up. Sturven in second spot, aiming to try and collect the extra point that is on offer to try and take the lead in the King of the Mountains classification. Well, at least get on par with Paul Voss. And Benedetti has got the job for Bora Argon 18 to try and collect that point himself, which will protect the lead of Voss. It's becoming quite a tactical affair at the front of the race. Sturven waiting patiently. He was the favourite between these riders, given his reputation for the one-day classics. He packs plenty of punch. Benedetti looks as if he's just laying off ever so slightly to try and catch them by surprise. Breen and Sturven shoulder to shoulder. Benedetti's not up to the task. And Jesper Sturven collects himself 1 more point in the race for the King of the Mountains classification. So he now moves to 2 points equal with Paul Voss, once he gets there, of course. And he almost is, as Breen has lost contact by quite some margin. The first timer in the race, and Jesper Sturven over the top of the climb in first spot. The Côte de Montpenchon. Here comes Paul Voss. He now finds himself, when it goes to the countback, in second place in the race for this white jersey with the red dots, the King of the Mountains jersey. But a good day out for Paul Voss, as it was yesterday, getting himself in the breakaway. And just as we saw 1 day ago, doing it with another teammate with him. It was Barta yesterday from the Czech Republic. Today, it's Benedetti, one of the Italian riders on this German outfit. And now it's time for a bite to eat for Jesper Sturven. A long stint from here before they get to the next obstacle of the day, which is the intermediate sprint. The intermediate sprint comes with 75.5 kilometres to go, and from this point until there we won't see much action, certainly from the main peloton. It will just be the Dimension Data squad, led here by Steve Cummings, containing that breakaway group. Mark Renshaw in the all-black colours. Another assist to be added to his great list of supporting roles for Mark Cavendish throughout what has been an extraordinary career. And Cavendish getting the chance to enjoy it with Bernard Eisel and Edvald Bosenhagen. Renshaw, Bosenhagen and Eisel have been 3 riders that played such a big role in the career of Mark Cavendish, and he really said that it made it even more special yesterday to be able to share the moment with them. This conversation at the front is about Paul Voss and whether he is continuing to try and come across to these 3. Still 130 kilometres to race, and 4 is far better than 3. Weather for ducks today. Thomas Voeckler, sitting at the back of the peloton, did exactly as you forecast yesterday. Once it got frantic towards the end of the stage, he just let the race drift away from him. He conceded a minute and a half. And once we make that journey south and we get towards the Pyrenees, you could almost put the house on it that Thomas Voeckler is going to get himself into a breakaway. Steve Cummings still setting the tempo at the front for Dimension Data. We'll see a lot of Steve throughout today's stage. The squad would have been hoping that Edvald Bosenhagen would be a contender for a day like this, but you can't help but wonder how much that fall yesterday will knock out of his power resources today. And a little problem at the back of the peloton. Hopefully nobody seriously injured here. And a little exchanging of some food amongst the riders from Orica Bike Exchange. This is Michael Albacini at the back of the group, which is a rare position for him. Steph Clement calling for some service from the IM Cycling squad. This is Rui Costa from the Lamprey team, one of the favourites for the stage today. Michael Matthews is also amongst them from Orica Bike Exchange, another man spoken about as a possible winner of today's stage. And the edX Quickstep team with a whole host of riders involved. Nearest the picture in the Lamprey colours is the former world champion, Rui Costa of Portugal. And Joaquim Rodriguez, the man who won a similar stage last year, stage 3 to the top of the Mer de Huy, which is in Belgium, finds himself gingerly on the side of the road.
This is Rui Costa from the Lamprey Merida team. Arashiro, he's the man, the Japanese rider, handed off his own front wheel to team leader Costa. He's on his way and Arashiro will wait for service. And there it is, the mechanic running up, back wheel and front wheel in hand.
Marcel Kittel with the black colours on from edX Quickstep, just remounting his bike. Off to the side from edX Quickstep is also Tony Martin, who has had some horrible crashes in the Tour de France. Was that Matteo Tessato riding the opposite direction back down the course, which is actually illegal for safety reasons.
Well, one of the Tinkoff riders on the side, and I couldn't quite see who it was. We see Rick Verbrugge here, the team director of YAM Cycling, former
Contador.
Tour de France stage winner himself, and it is Contador.
He looks okay, but he looks frustrated, and that is understandable. Alberto Contador, the last 24 hours have not been kind to him. Tony Martin gives him a little pat on the back because Tony Martin has full respect for Contador, and understandably so. Maciej Bodnar is the other rider from Tinkoff that's waiting with Alberto Contador, powerhouse from Poland.
Well, when I saw a Tinkoff rider turn around and come back, that tells you immediately it's someone important. And in Tinkoff team, there are two important riders in terms of winning at the Tour de France, Alberto Contador and Peter Sagan. Not a good sign for Alberto. Hopefully no more damage, but when it rains, it pours.
Literally, today. The good news each time we've seen... As we return to the breakaway group of 4, they make their way through the town of Coutances. It is Jesper Stuyven at the front, followed by Casera Benedetti. It's then Paul Voss and Vegan Breen at the back of the group. So two of the teams that we saw in the breakaway yesterday have got themselves represented again, and they are both wildcard invitations to the race. Might get a chance to see the cathedral in the centre of this town shortly. And
right on cue.
Perfect. The Cathedral of Notre Dame de Coutances. It dates back to around 430. It was then destroyed by the Normans in 866. Before, in the 11th century, it was rebuilt and sanctified on the 8th of December 1057 in the presence of the Duke Guillaume, who went on to be the future King of England some 10 years later. And throughout the church, as you look around it, there are plenty of little chapels attached to it, which show from back in a period when church was visited quite regularly and they had multiple services. It was also significantly damaged throughout the Second World War, particularly in 1944 with the D-Day landings.
Well, just watching the riders move through the town here, we saw how narrow they got. The crowds are huge, but very narrow, twisting and turning, and on cobblestones right at the top of that hill as they go through town. They're the sort of moments, although not high speed, they're always dangerous little moments for a touchdown, someone slipping out unexpectedly. That's exactly what happened to Alberto Contador yesterday, and it was dry. So today is much more treacherous, and it's all those little things, the change of the road surface, those little smaller sections and more narrow sections they have to go through. Chris Froome, he's aware of all that stuff, and of course a great example 2 years ago, Chris Froome crashing his way out of the Tour de France, went down twice before they even reached a cobbled section that year, which was the big talking point. So Chris Froome, this sort of thing makes him really quite nervous. He hasn't got the best history in wet conditions. He'd be worried about, and his doctors will be worried about, secondary infection. So getting grit or grime in there when you're sweating, or if you happen to crash again, go down on the same wound, that can spell disaster. So Contador, I expect, will stay completely rugged up as long as possible, only taking off